Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Tournament Takes. This is a channel where I'm going to kind of break down some daily fantasy sports, including NFL, NBA, and MLB DFS, and kind of give you guys some tournament takes that I think can help you take down a slate. So let's get into it. I kind of wanted to break down the Week 10 NFL slate for you guys and kind of give you guys some strategy on a couple different ways you can build this slate this week or build your lineups for the slate this week. So let's get into it. At quarterback this week, we have Kyler Murray at the top, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Josh Allen. All of them are excellent plays. We have Kyler Murray in, a game that I think it's going to be highly targeted against Buffalo. We saw Buffalo hang, 40 some odd points against Seattle last week. So this is a spot where this could be a shootout type of game. So Kyler Murray is intriguing. You have Aaron Rodgers against Jacksonville. I'm not as as high on Aaron Rodgers this week just because I don't think they're going to need to pass the ball a ton against Jacksonville. You might get one or two long touchdowns to Davante Adams or Scantling, but other than that, I think they're just going to run the ball and try to take control of the game that way. And Aaron Jones looks like a good play this week. I do like Russell Wilson against the Rams this week. We got to note that Chris Carson is also potentially coming back from injury. So this could be a spot where, the Seattle tends to lean on the run a little bit more. I know this year we've seen Seattle pass the ball significantly more than we have in past years. I mean, Russell Wilson's attempts are really through the roof. But, those first two games against Atlanta and basically against New England was his lowest attempts in the game, but he's throwing the ball 40 times, and I think we're seeing that as a result of just their secondary being so bad that they're letting the other team score and they have to throw the ball to keep in the game. So not a bad way to go either. Josh Allen against Arizona. Arizona's defense has been a little bit better this year against the deep ball. Arizona's actually third in the league. Against short passes, they're 27th. They're giving up a lot, through the middle and through the left of the field, like the short middle of the field and the short left of the field. So this is a spot where you could see Josh Allen, attempt a bunch of short passes. You could see more completions. They could tend to throw it more. Arizona's defensive line is also not bad. I mean, they're 14th in the sack rate in the league, so kind of middle of the pack. So they are beatable, but they are getting pressure on the quarterback. As far as Buffalo's offensive line, this year Buffalo is they're taking sacks at a pretty high rate. Josh Allen's been sacked 20 times this year. It could be a situation where you do see, Arizona sack Josh Allen for a few times, and then they're going to have to throw to kind of catch up. So let's kind of break down the slate and get into some targets that, that I think you could be looking for. Obviously, there's going to be some highly targeted games this week. Buffalo and Arizona is going to be a highly targeted game. You're definitely going to have Seattle and the Rams. As we've seen in weeks past, people are just double stacking against the Rams. They're taking two receivers. They're bringing it back with either Lockett or Metcalf. And, that's been a strategy that's worked most weeks. This week, however, I think this is going to be a little tougher and a little, I don't think it's going to be as fruitful as it's been in the weeks past. Deshaun Watson against Cleveland. I'm not really, high on that Houston offense. Cleveland has not been bad. I mean, they're middle of the pack in the sack rate, so they are getting some pressure on the quarterback. They are letting them run the ball quite a bit, so this may be a spot where you could see a little bit more of Duke Johnson. David Johnson is out with injury this week. But aside from that, I'm not, really, really high on Deshaun Watson purely because Cleveland, if I'm looking at it right now, Cleveland is kind of middle of the pack in terms of the deep pass and short passes. They are giving up some production, specifically down the left side of the field. So this could be a game where you can see kind of like a fuller lineup on the left side of the field and catch a deep one, which I think it could be a good target. But aside from that, I'm not really high on Watson. In the cheaper range, you do have, we saw last week that Drew Lock won someone $1 million. Drew Lock has been throwing the ball at an incredibly high pace, at an incredibly high rate, and that's because they tend to fall behind in games, and as they're falling behind, they kind of got to throw the ball to keep up. We have been seeing that Denver's entire offense is kind of taking shots down the field, and this matchup is not bad for him. Atlanta was actually a really good matchup. We saw Drew Lock, put up 33 fantasy points. A majority of those fantasy points, most all of them came, towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter. He had one like 20 some odd yard or 16-yard rushing touchdown that we saw towards the end of the game, which kind of really boosted his fantasy points. But other than that, he had a decent day. If we look at it, his receivers were targeted quite a bit. We did see, Noah Fant go out, literally after the first play of the game, we saw Noah Fant kind of, get injured and kind of head to the sideline. But Jerry Jeudy in this game had, 14 targets, 10 targets the last game. But what may surprise a lot of people is on this squad, Tim Patrick is actually their deep threat. And he had 9 targets the last game against Atlanta. I mean, he did not. He did catch a touchdown. I think that was the late in the game. That was the second to the last touchdown that he caught. But other than that, he didn't have like a very, very big day. He was limited last week coming into the game. I think he's going to be a little bit healthier going into this week. So that's one person I kind of want to keep my eye on. I think Tim Patrick could be a great sleeper play this week. Las Vegas, the Raiders are pretty bad against the pass. They can be beaten in the secondary. They're the third worst. They're 28th out of 32 in the league against the deep passes. And Drew Lock is throwing the deep ball at the highest rate of any quarterback in the NFL right now. So I would take some shots at Tim Patrick here. I feel like he's a good play. KJ Hamler is also another guy who I think could be a good play. He had 10 targets last week, very quiet, 3,800. He was 3,200 last week, basically went unowned, with the Jeudy and Fant there. I think, something to monitor here is see whether, whether Fant's going to play this game or not. I mean, whether he's going to be limited or not throughout practices this week, and then kind of make a decision on whether you want to go Jeudy or Patrick. But I think one of the targets for tournaments that I want to take is I do want to take Drew Lock. I don't feel like his upside obviously is as high as all the other quarterbacks. He is a $5,500 quarterback, but if he gets you 25 points, that's like 5x in a GPP. So, to get 5x out of Kyler Murray, he's going to have one of these over 100 rushing yard games with 3 touchdowns, one rushing touchdown, and I think that Drew Lock could get there a little easier than Kyler Murray can, though Buffalo's defense has been really, really bad against the pass this year. They're getting beat pretty much all over the field. So if you want to go like Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins or Kyler Murray and Kirk, I think it's a really, really good spot to kind of take advantage of the Buffalo defense. It's a little more expensive. So let's just move on to running back. I'm gonna kind of give you guys a few plays this week to build. It's gonna be a little different. In weeks past, like last week, we had Christian McCaffrey. He was I think 8,500 coming back from injury, 18 attempts, caught all 10 of his target, 28 touches for 37 points. Obviously, everyone's talking about, Mike Davis. If Christian McCaffrey is not going this week, Mike Davis is $4,000. He is going up against the number 1 run defense in the league in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay did get smoked this past week against the Saints, but if you look at it, Alvin Kamara didn't really have a great game against them. They haven't really given up much to the running backs all year long, and they've actually played earlier this year. In that game, Christian McCaffrey was in as well against Tampa Bay. With McCaffrey in, Mike Davis still put up 15.5 fantasy points at 4,000. He had 8 catches for 74 yards, and that's kind of what we're looking at. Is I don't really think that he's going to get much out of the backfield, especially since in the red zone and stuff like that, they're having Curtis Samuel starting to rush the ball a little bit. But, to fade a $4,000 guy who's going to get the work, if McCaffrey doesn't go, it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. Um, you know, the one caveat to that is that there's so many good running backs this week, so it's really going to kind of come down to opportunity cost. We got Aaron Jones in a great spot against Jacksonville. Jacksonville is actually stuffing the running back behind the line of the scrimmage about 21% of the time, which is sixth in the league, but they are also giving up a significant amount in the passing games to the running backs. I think right now, let me just look for this. Jacksonville is giving up, they're 24th against the short pass in the league. Most of their passes are through the short left and short middle of the field. So you could see Aaron Jones really get it done in the passing game here. He has had 5 targets nearly every week that he's played, 4 to 5 targets minimum. 1 week 4 against New Orleans, but other than that, it's been 8 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets. So he could really get it done. And if they play with the lead here, I really don't see a way that Jones doesn't smash this price tag. Another running back that I think is in a good spot, James Conner. James Conner really let us down last week. I had plenty of him in my lineups. He only got 9 touches. Out of those 9 touches, I think like 3 or 4 of them came in the fourth quarter when it was like 2 minutes to go, and they just had to literally run the clock out and just take a knee essentially. But other than that, I mean, this was a game that I think everyone kind of scripted as Pittsburgh playing from ahead, and James Conner was going to get the work in the rushing game and kind of just run out the clock, and it just didn't play out. Pittsburgh is actually one of the worst teams against the deep pass in the league, but they're also the best team with pressure on the quarterback. So we saw quite a few passes. Actually, Amari Cooper got some production last week. We saw CeeDee Lamb get some production last week. But this is a spot I think going back to James Conner makes some sense. Cincinnati hasn't been great against the run. They are allowing, right now they're 31st in the league against running backs, but they're only actually allowing 3.7, Cincinnati right now is the worst running team, worst run defense in the league, allowing 5 yards per carry to the running backs. However, their success rate, that means that the amount that they're allowing on third downs is only 52%. So this could be a scenario where, it's 3rd and 1 and, Jones does not get the touchdown or doesn't get there. That's not something that I'm going to weigh very heavily, especially in this Packers offense, because they have so many other weapons that really puts pressure on the defense to kind of cover Davante Adams and cover the other receivers, which really is going to open things up for Jones. So I think Jones is in an excellent spot this week. Really, Jones, Conner is someone I'm targeting. Kareem Hunt is a little more difficult against Houston. We may have Nick Chubb coming back this week, so it's not really a spot where I think I want to take some shots. Josh Jacobs is, he was significantly owned last week, which kind of surprised me. It's just not somewhere where I think I want to go. I mean, Denver has not been bad against the run. Right now, Denver is giving up 4 yards per carry to the running back. They are stuffing the quarterback at a decent rate, but, the Raiders do have a bunch of other options that they can go with. They can pass with Carr. They can get the ball to Waller. There's no right or wrong with Jacobs. I feel like, with the game going the way that it is, if Las Vegas gets ahead, if the Raiders do get ahead, they could definitely lean on Jacobs to run the clock out and kind of beat Denver that way. But I see the game kind of a little more of a shootout, kind of a sneaky shootout is kind of what I'm leaning on. Both of these teams, Denver's pretty good against the pass. So they are allowing, some production around the middle of the field, and deep shots left, deep shots down the middle of the field. So this is a game where I think I could see, kind of them leaning a little bit more on Waller to move the ball. If Josh Jacobs doesn't get going, I think, we could kind of see a spot where they might abandon the run a little bit. But, I mean, he had 31 carries against Cleveland. Now, granted, that was a game where, weather was a big issue. Aside from that, I really don't see Josh Jacobs breaking the slate, especially at this price tag. And the key this week is that there's so much value in the lower ends. I mean, We have Miles Sanders coming back from injury, facing the New York Giants. This is a spot last week where we saw Boston Scott catch that late touchdown towards the end of the game, and kind of put Philly over to kind of win it. But against the Giants, we saw Josh Jacobs go for 18 fantasy points. He had 5 targets. He did catch that last 18-yard touchdown that kind of put him over the hump. Something that I think could happen here as well. Whereas I think that they are going to give Miles Sanders, some of the work. We've seen a trend this year where, running backs that are coming back from injury, they're taking their time and coming back from injury, they're running him out there. I mean, Christian McCaffrey came back and they gave him 28 touches after saying they were going to alternate. So this is a spot where I think, he could be a little sneaky. At 6,400, Miles Sanders is kind of someone I'm interested in. I also do like, the Denver running game. The Chargers running game. Eckler's still on IR. Justin Jackson was not practicing today. So we don't know if he's going to play this week. We do have one of their other backs that is healthier this week that may come back and play, but we're not sure. Pope, I forgot it. Yeah, Troymaine Pope. He's been pretty good. 6 yards per attempt in his game against Denver, which is not a bad rushing defense. But 7 targets, 5 receptions. This is a spot last week where we saw Balaj just really, really break out. We saw, Justin Jackson come in for 1 snap, working through injury. But this is a spot where I see Balaj coming out and just, can really take the reins of this game. He looked really, really good in that last game. He is back on the practice squad. So this is something that we need to kind of monitor. I don't know if they're going to start him, but whoever the starting running back is on the Chargers this weekend is someone who I'm going to want exposure to. Usually you have, some really, really standout plays. Like we have those for the $4,000 Mike Davis. You usually have some really standout plays at running back, like Dalvin Cook last week, or you have like some clear-cut chalk value. This week it's kind of all over the place. There's a bunch of different games, a bunch of different ways that we can go. Someone that I really, really want to get into my lineups is Antonio Gibson. Now, he didn't practice today. He is questionable to play this week. He only had 6 touches last week, but, when Washington is ahead, they are rushing the ball at a really, really high rate. Probably one of the top 5 rates in the league if they do get a lead. They are playing Detroit this week. We saw Dalvin Cook just shred him this past weekend. And, Antonio Gibson is their workhorse running back. He's the guy who's getting the carries and who is rushing the ball most of the time. He is giving up a lot of third down, most all third down work. I think he's only played 1 third down snap this season, third down snap this season. He's giving up most of the work to J.D. McKissick. J.D. McKissick this past week, they got down to New York 23-3. They had to pass the ball. They lost Kyle Allen, at the end of the first quarter. We have Alex Smith that came in, and he was basically just checking down the ball to McKissick. This is a spot where if Antonio Gibson doesn't go, you have a double threat in McKissick to get the targets and to get the rushing attempts. So this is another thing to keep an eye on. I think McKissick or Gibson can make for great plays. They're not really being talked about much this week. They might go under the radar. Another under the radar, really, really deep tournament play that I think could be that could kind of break the slate this week is Chris Carson. Chris Carson is coming back from injury. We're seeing when he is healthy, he's getting about 15 touches a game. They are using him in the pass game. And this defense, the Rams defense, is actually getting beat on the run, against the run quite a bit. Right now, the Rams are giving up about 4.68 yards per carry to the running back. They're not stuffing the running back behind the line of scrimmage at all. They are 32nd, the worst in the league against the running back stuff rate. They're allowing a lot of success to the running backs. They're giving up 4 yards, just basic line yards, but adjusted line yards are 4.68. This is a spot where I can see, if the Rams are going to bring pressure against Seattle, I could see a bunch of check downs from Russell Wilson here, having Chris Carson back, his security blanket. You could also see those, targets go to Tyler Lockett, which kind of makes this a little riskier play. But I feel like with the rushing upside that Chris Carson brings and the targets, this is someone that I really am targeting to get into my lineups this week. So he's going to be the first player that I want to put into my lineup. I know Mike Davis is $4,000. It's very tough to see him, to see him failing this spot. And, I thought initially that I wanted to fade this spot and kind of play maybe a Curtis Samuel, because Curtis Samuel is also getting those rushing in the red zone. I just think it's very hard to fade him, even if he gets like 6 catches for 60 yards. That's still 12 points. That's 3x. I mean, it doesn't kill you, but if he gets that and he happens to get a 1-yard touchdown, they tackle Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore, at the 1-yard line or inside the 5, and he's getting the touches. It's very difficult to kind of fade that if he's putting up 20 points. Now, again, it is a riskier play than people are gonna, everyone's gonna tell you it's a smash spot. It's not a smash spot. It's a spot where it's a play because of the amount of volume that he's gonna get. We've seen Teddy Bridgewater also have rushing upside, so this is a scenario where if Teddy Bridgewater throws for 2 touchdowns, rushes for 1 himself, does Mike Davis get there? Can he just, can he lay a stinker? Kansas City was the worst, rushing defense in the league. We saw Christian McCaffrey tear them up. He still put up 8 points even with McCaffrey, and he still got 5 targets, 34 yards, but the passing matchups for the running back wasn't as good last week as it is this week. It's probably the best, probably one of the best running back passing matchups in the league. Sorry, I take that back. This is actually a really tough matchup in both aspects, in terms of passing and in terms of rushing. So, for Mike Davis, I'm kind of 50-50 on it right now. I'm not really sure what I want to do. I know people are going to plug him in, and, if you're playing a single entry GPP or you're playing a 3-entry max, he's going to be like 50% owned. And if he goes off, you're going to lose if you don't have him. So this is a spot where I kind of want to take a stand, and I'm going to fade him even in a single entry, because I feel like that the leverage that, that it gives you when a running back is that high owned, and that matchup is that difficult, there's not a guarantee that he's going to get there. So it might be a spot where I kind of want to fade and kind of see how the rest of the slate plays out, how the other positions play out, and then kind of go back to it and see if I really want to get him in or not. At wide receiver, we have Davante Adams at the top. He's been catching touchdowns at an incredible rate. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns, 2 weeks ago. He had a touchdown against San Francisco. He's put up 47, 30, and 36 points. He's really good. He's up to $9,000 right now. Again, this is a game against Jacksonville where you might see a big, long touchdown to Davante Adams, and you might see some targets to him, but I really think that they're going to control this game by rushing. I really don't think Jacksonville has the firepower to kind of keep up with Green Bay. And Green Bay defense is really good. They are getting pressure on the quarterback, and, with Jake Luton behind center, I really don't think they're going to be able to move the ball that much. I could be wrong, but this is a spot where, I kind of want to shy away from the passing game of Green Bay and kind of take my shots with the running back matchup. So I'm going to go back and just plug in Aaron Jones. The more that I look at it, I think I want to kind of have Aaron Jones in this lineup. Whoops. Going back to wide receiver, Hopkins against Buffalo, I really think, Kyler Murray, he's throwing the ball very well. He's playing very well, all around. And Buffalo is giving up quite a bit of production to the wide receivers. We saw this past week that it wasn't Lockett who got it. It was Metcalf. Metcalf is more of a, deep threat. They're deep threat receivers, though. Lockett also catches deep balls. Hopkins and Kirk are both kind of the deep threats. Hopkins lines up on the left side, Kirk lines up on the right side. And, we're seeing, going back to kind of Metcalf first, we're seeing that, against certain defenses, they're taking advantage of different receivers. Like, against San Francisco. San Francisco is not great against the deep ball. We're seeing San Francisco, is 30th against the deep ball. We saw, Metcalf go off 43 points. Arizona is actually a lot better against the deep ball than they are against the short passes. Arizona is actually 27th against the short passes, and against the deep ball, they're third in the league. As a result, we saw against the Cardinals that Lockett actually had that monster game, 15 catches underneath for 200 yards. So the Seahawks are exploiting the matchups. I think anyone in the league is kind of it's kind of where they're going, is what the defense is giving up is where they're going. So against Arizona this week, against Buffalo, it's kind of like last week. Last week I was on Metcalf, but I wasn't on that game entirely just because I felt like it could be Metcalf or it could be Tyler Lockett. Buffalo is kind of bad all over. They're not good against the deep pass. They're not good against the short pass. So I feel like it could come from a bunch of different places. It could come from Hopkins. It could come from Kirk. If I had to take my shots here, I would kind of take Kirk, even though he's getting just a few attempts, just a few looks per game. He scored a touchdown now, 5 touchdowns in his last 3 games. He's been coming on here late in the season, over 20 points the last three weeks in a row. They had the bye week 8. And I think this is another game where he can kind of keep it going. He did have his targets have started to tick up a little bit from earlier this year, 5 targets. We've seen they're starting to go to him a little bit more against Seattle. They took some deep. He had a couple of catches that were like short touchdowns in the end zone, but that was more of a result of doubling Hopkins. So I think this week, if I'm going to this game, I'm probably taking a shot on Kirk. The game that I think Seattle as well. Seattle and the Rams game is another game like that. It's going to be targeted in terms of like people running a double stack and a bring back. In terms of this game, Russell Wilson, he's just been really, really good this entire year. But like I said, there are plenty of quarterbacks on this slate who have the similar upside. There's four to five in the top range that have his upside, and there's some down in the bottom too that have their upside. This week, like I said, when they're alternating, when Metcalf, it seems like they're alternating. Metcalf has a big week 1, week, and then Lockett has a big week. I think that was more just as a result of the matchups, and this is one of the weeks again where we're getting a matchup against the Rams, who are kind of like the same thing. Whereas they're really good against the deep pass, but they're really bad against the short pass down the middle. So this is another spot where I feel like this could be kind of like a Tyler Lockett game, whereas you're kind of see more people lean to Metcalf this week because they're going to say, oh, he's the better receiver, he did better in the matchup last week. And I really don't think that's the case. I think that if the deep ball is not there, they're having Metcalf run some go routes, run down the field, and that's opening up some zone coverage underneath for Lockett. So I feel like this week, if I'm playing this game, Lockett is someone I want to jam in. This is a week where I feel like Lockett could have that 35 to 40 point upside. We've seen it once against Dallas, we've seen it once against Arizona, and then you've kind of seen Metcalf have a solid week every other week. Every week it's Metcalf. This is the week where I want to go back to Lockett, especially since he's been played so much the last few weeks and he's been busting for people. I would go right back to him here. So in this game, I do like Lockett. The tough part is I usually always try to correlate my lineups. I like to have a run back on the other side. So in this particular game against the Rams, it's just hard to figure out where this production is going to come from. You had Cooper Kupp, who had 20 targets his last outing against Miami. You have Robert Woods, who's rushing from the 1 yard, for touchdowns. So it's really difficult for me to kind of have a run back here. Henderson's getting work. You're having Malcolm Brown get some work. It's just very, very difficult to figure out where it's going to come from. Josh Reynolds, I think, against San Francisco scored a touchdown, I think. He had a 40-yard bomb. So it's really, really difficult for me to figure out where it's going to come from. If I had to take a shot in this game, I want the deep passes. Seattle is giving up a lot against the deep passes, though. Jared Goff is not throwing the deep pass as much as the other quarterbacks in the league. I still feel like we saw that, that kind of upside from Goff against the 49ers, where he did throw that deep pass to Josh Reynolds. I think this could be a same spot where you could kind of get that deep pass from Reynolds, and at his salary, Reynolds is how much on this slate? At 3,500, you really don't need much from him at all. I mean, Goff is throwing. He's throwing the deep ball. Actually, not. It's a little bit more than I thought. It's about 6 times a game. And out of those, you have Josh Reynolds averaging deep targets of 1.6 per game. So Josh Reynolds actually averaging higher deep pass than Robert Woods per game. So if this is a game that I want to stack, I want pieces of it. I don't want to stack the whole game. I want pieces of certain games that I feel like are going to be really, really high scoring. I like Tyler Lockett and Josh Reynolds as a run back. Let's go to the Denver. Let's go to the Los Angeles Chargers and Miami. Like I said, this game I felt like I do want the running back, so I'm going to kind of wait and see how that plays out. We did see, last week, Chase Edmonds had 25 carries against Miami, and it didn't pan out. That's because I feel like their line, the Cardinals' offensive line, is not that great to begin with. I mean, they're 23rd in the league. They're against their offensive line. They're not really averaging more than 4 yards per carry. And Chase Edmonds has been much more effective throughout the season in the pass game. And Miami's not really giving up. Miami actually has been sneaky good against the pass against running backs. They are actually they're not actually stuffing the running back much, but Miami's one of the best matchups on the board for a running back. However, Chase Edmonds, I just feel like the matchup that they had, he had 25 touches, he just didn't get into the end zone. It is kind of what it is. You also have Kyler Murray, who's rushing for touchdowns. That takes away Chase Edmonds' upside. That's kind of why I wasn't on him last weekend, and kind of why I pivoted to Connor, and that didn't work out either. But in this week, Chargers are running the ball at a fairly decent place. Like I said, I like Ballage, I like Justin Jackson. I'll kind of wait to see how those play out. Whether if Ballage is not, if he's on the practice squad, and we have Kelly and Pope, I might go Pope. Pope has looked better throughout the weeks than has Josh Kelly. But again, in the flex spot, it's really hard, again, like I said, to fade that $4,000 Mike Davis. But I think the pivot here is if you hear Kelly is Ballage is out and Justin Jackson's not going to go, I think the pivot at 4,000 is Pope. He is going to get the touches. As long as he's there, they're not really giving Joshua Kelly much. The pivot, I really think that it's going to be is going to be Pope. So keep an eye on this situation. I want whoever the starting running back is here. Let's go to San Francisco and New Orleans. Michael Thomas is back now, which I think is going to take away some work from Kamara. Kamara's been getting 10 targets, 9 targets a game. He had 13 targets against Chicago. I really don't think that's going to continue. They have Latavius Murray there behind the line, who is going to be rushing the ball. Kamara gets most of his production in the pass, though he is getting some in the rushing game as well. He hasn't topped 100 yards rushing on the season, but he's getting there in terms of getting his targets, getting his catches. He's getting there in the passing game. So we're seeing that big game that he had against Green Bay was in the passing game. So this is the kind of spot where I'm going to be off of New Orleans altogether. I think they take away enough from each other. Michael Thomas and Kamara take away enough from each other. And, Latavius Murray being there, just touchdown equity. I think I kind of want to avoid this game altogether. San Francisco, depending on, who they have active, who they have ready to go. New Orleans is giving up a lot in the deep pass. We did see a couple days ago on Monday Night Football, they did shut down the Patriots. New Orleans is getting quite a bit of pressure on the quarterback. I think it might be a good a good play to play New Orleans defense, just because they're getting, I don't know how much pressure they got on the quarterback, but they had 3 sacks against Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay is pretty good in pass protections. They've had quite a few sacks this entire year, every single week. So this is not a bad play, in terms of if we're gonna have especially Nick Mullens behind center for San Francisco. Nick Mullens is throwing, a couple picks. He had 2 interceptions against Philly, 1 interception against Green Bay, 1 against the Jets. You know, it's something where I might want a piece of, but it's not really where I'm gonna go. I'm only gonna play one lineup, I think, this weekend, and I don't think that's a game that I want to target. Let's look at some of the other games. I think like I said, Cincinnati. Actually, let's get to Tampa Bay and Carolina. This game, like I said, I really like Mike Davis, but I think I want some pieces of the passing game if I'm gonna go here. I really want DJ Moore. They played against Tampa Bay earlier this year. DJ Moore is their deep threat. If you look at the big plays, he's getting a 42 yards, 74-yard touchdown against the Saints. Saints are not good against the deep pass. Atlanta's not good against the deep pass. We have Arizona on there. He's against the Chargers. He's a 30-yarder. So this is a spot where I think that DJ Moore can get there. He lines up usually on the left side of the field, and they are giving up quite a bit against, Tampa Bay is giving up against the deep pass. It's not the best of matchups, but Tampa Bay they are getting beat a little bit down the left side of the field and down the middle of the field. So if I am going to this game, DJ Moore, someone I want to target. Robbie, at his price at 5,100, he doesn't need much to get you there. 5 catches, 50 yards, and touchdown kind of does it for you. So he might be someone I'm interested in. But at another receiver position, I think I just like kind of going through the games that we went through. I kind of want to go back to that Denver game. I think I want pieces. I'm going to kind of keep an eye on it, but I kind of want I think I want a piece of Tim Patrick. I think he is gonna get there this week. I was on Jerry Jeudy last week. I had pieces of Fant and pieces of Jeudy. The thing that really worked out for Jeudy is that Fant got injured, and Jeudy lines up in the slot most of the time. So he was getting a lot of production. He got a couple of deep passes last week. But, Las Vegas is giving up 70% more than the league average down the left side of the field. So Tim Patrick lines up on the left side of the field about 40% of the time. So I think this could be a spot where he might catch a 40-yard bomb for a touchdown. And at his price at 4,900, it doesn't take much to get you there. He's getting the targets. Like I said, Drew Lock is throwing the ball down the field at an incredible, at the highest pace in the league right now. He's throwing the most deep passes out of any of the quarterbacks in the league right now. Number 2 being Tom Brady, number 3 being Nick Foles. So tight end this week, tight end's been a tough position all year. Like I said, I do like to correlate it, so I might want some pieces of Darren Waller. Denver is not the greatest matchup for tight ends, but Darren Waller is getting a lot of work in the passing game. He's getting the targets. I think this past week he had, 10 targets? So he is getting, the passing work. He is their de facto number 1 receiver in a sense, and they are giving up some, deep passes down the middle of the field. So Darren Waller is someone I'm interested in at tight end. Another person that I think I might be interested in, who is Houston playing? Cleveland. So Cleveland seems to be, I think Hooper is trending towards chalk this week. I can kind of see why. He's coming back from injury. He's 3,900. 10 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets. From what I'm seeing right now, Houston is 32nd against the short pass in the league. Austin Hooper is you have Austin Hooper coming back. He's operating in the middle of the field. You do have potentially Chubb coming back as well. Kareem Hunt is there as well to take some passing game work, but Hooper operating out of the middle of the field, I think I kind of want to plug him in. I really like the matchup. They're 32nd against the short pass in the league, and they've been, Hooper's been getting it down the middle of the field. So I think he's someone I want to plug in and see if he plays. This is kind of like a early build lineup. It's only Wednesday. It will adjust, you know. As far as like correlating that, I don't really know if I want a run back from Houston on this particular slate. Like I said, Cleveland is not bad. Maybe I said like I wouldn't mind pieces of Will Fuller. But let me look at their Cleveland's run game. So Cleveland's run game is actually, they're third in the league against the run. So I do not want pieces of Duke Johnson. I know a lot of people are going to play Duke Johnson this week because David Johnson's injured. I just don't want. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Houston. Wow, Houston is actually 31st against the league in against the pass. Wow, so Cleveland. So Cleveland's kind of middle of the pack against the run. Like I said, I don't think I want pieces of Duke Johnson. I just feel like, you know, I'd be playing him just because, you know, he'd be getting the work. But if I'm gonna do that, I rather go to Mike Davis. You know, at $4,000, I feel like that's a better play than this. So that's kind of the lineup that I have right now. I mean, that's some of the takes that I think could be, these are some takes right here that I think could be slate breakers. You know, if we take away Aaron Jones, you know, Aaron Jones can be a little chalky. Take away Hooper, I think might be a little bit a little bit chalky. These four are some deep tournament plays that I think could help win you the week this week. I mean, they're not sexy plays. You know, Josh Reynolds, he had 9 targets last week. He's $3,500, and people are kind of gonna overlook that because they're gonna want to jam in Cooper Kupp, and rightfully so. I mean, they are in a great spot, but I played Jalen Guyton last week at 3,100. You know, and the reason for that is Jalen Guyton had, you know, he's getting 1 to 2 targets a game, but he had a 70-yard bomb, you know, against Jacksonville, and he's getting those, you know, 72-yarder touchdown against Tampa Bay. So, you know, it's plays like these that, you know, that are the cheap ones that could win you, just break the slate and kind of win it for you. As I'm looking at that, you know, kind of takes me back a little bit to DJ Moore. I'm going to plug in Aaron Jones again. It takes me back to kind of DJ Moore. Like I said, I think he can get there in the passing game. And, you know, I feel like this could be a good spot for him to kind of smash. He put up 23 in the first game with McCaffrey in. So that's one place I kind of want to take advantage of. But let's go to defenses. So like I said, I also did like the running back. I did like Miles Sanders. So let's see if I can plug in Miles Sanders here. Plug in the Eagles defense. Eagles are turning over you know, quarterbacks quite a bit. 4 sacks, 2 defensive recoveries against Dallas, obviously. Just a week ago, you know, week 7 against the Giants, they put up 9 points. You know, Daniel Jones has been a little bit better, but overall that Giants defense is just not moving the ball like they should. So I think Eagles defense might be a little chalkier this week, but pairing him with Miles Sanders, I think, you know, with coming back from injury, you're not going to see a lot of people on there. Like I said, I do like Tyler Lockett, I like Carson, and I like Josh Reynolds. At quarterback kind of leaves me with the 7,900. And, you know, since I do have Carson here and I do have Lockett, you know, I do want the quarterbacks that could get me the top of the heap. You know, I feel like Russell Wilson can get it done. Like, you know, he could get the rushing touchdowns. He could, you know, throw to Lockett. He could throw to Metcalf. I feel like plugging Russell Wilson in still gives you that upside, even without a double double receiver stack. Pairing him with Chris Carson gives you all the touchdowns in that game. So essentially, as long as Wilson's throwing it or Carson is on the field rushing it, you know, we'll keep an eye on this, but this is kind of the tournament build that I'm looking to kind of do. A lineup like this, you're playing, you know, heavily correlated lineup. Your one-offs are, you know, Aaron Jones, who may be a little chalky, and I have a one-off here on Austin Hooper. Ideally, I'd like to pair and have a run back from Jacksonville But let's see if I can do that. If I can, you know, take out Tim Patrick here and run it back from someone from Jacksonville. Yeah, I mean, I don't really like Keelan Cole. Yeah, I am not really a huge fan of anyone on Jacksonville here. What about a run back from Houston? So say if I left Aaron Jones alone and I took out the Tim Patrick deep passes, I want someone who's going to give me that deep pass upside. So let's look at Houston. Will Fuller's kind of expensive. Brandon Cook's kind of expensive. Actually, Brandon Cooks is not cheap, but let's see if we move off of Aaron Jones. We correlate those two. Let's say I get a Mike. Let's say I get Robbie or a DJ Moore. And that leaves me 7,100 for a run back. Yeah, I mean, this is not an ideal lineup that I would play, but this kind of gives you an idea of how I like to build my lineup, so kind of where I want to go. You know, I like, as far as the receivers go, I like targeting receivers who are getting targeted deep downfield. You know, they provide you an upside that you're not able to really capture with, you know, receivers that, you know, like Keenan Allen. He gets you there every single week, right? He's getting the targets, 9, 11, 11 targets, 12 targets, 28 points, 21 points, 25 points. But a receiver who's being targeted, you know, Carolina, he put up 34 points. A receiver who's being targeted heavily down the field, let's say on his team, let's go with Mike Williams, being targeted heavily down the field, he gives you that 30-point upside. You know, he also gives you a lower floor, but he gives you that upside to kind of break a slate. So with Reynolds, Lockett, I mean, I like the safety of Lockett here, but you know, ideally I kind of want, you know, someone who's going to give me a little bit more of that upside. I also don't think that you know, Tampa Bay is in a bad spot. You know, people are on, you know, they say it's Leonard Fournette's job. Leonard Fournette, they were trailing behind. Most of his stuff was in the passing game. I think last game they only had 3 carries from Ronald Jones. He did have 15 carries against the Giants, you know, but I really think that they're still going to use Ronald Jones in the rushing game. Carolina is not bad against the run. They've been better in the last few weeks. They are actually stuffing the running back at a pretty, you know, significant rate. So it's not somewhere I really want to target. I may want to figure out, you know, if I am playing DJ Moore, or if I am playing, like, if I get off Aaron Jones and I'm playing maybe a Mike Davis here, you know, like maybe I play chalky Mike Davis, maybe I can come back on the other side with someone from Tampa Bay, you know, maybe a Mike Evans. I mean, you have all kinds of opportunities here. But, you know, Josh Reynolds, Hooper, these are some deep tournament plays I think that could really open up the slate for you. Like I said, I do like Tim Patrick. Let's get Aaron Jones in here. So this is the kind of lineup I would want to go with. You know, ideally I'd like to run it back with maybe someone from, you know, Hooper, like I said, is a great matchup. Maybe I want to run it back with someone like Waller, like I said earlier, right? And then if I run it back with Waller, let's see if I can get someone back on the Denver side. Okay, Denver and Waller. So maybe a cheap one-off here, like I said, would be a Ronald Jones. So a lineup like this gives me some leverage off of, you know, the Tampa Bay passing game. It gives me some leverage off of the Mike Jones chalk. You know, if I'm playing someone that's 3,500. You know, so something like this is something I might look to do this weekend. I'm still, again, 50-50 on whether I'm going to play Mike Davis or not, but I kind of wanted to show you guys there's many different ways you can build this week. You can even go down from Carson and Sanders and plug in Antonio Gibson, or yeah, let's say Gibson, or you can go with Mike Davis, and Pope, and go get you maybe a DeAndre Hopkins. Let's go with a Lockett, Reynolds. Let's go with the DeAndre Hopkins. Let's go with Waller, Kyler Murray. And then if you want to run it back, let's say we run it back with Stephon Diggs. You know, so there's many different ways you can go. Running back, let's say we want to say we want to run, correlate it instead of Ronald Jones here. We want to plug in Aaron Jones. That leaves us 2,300 for defense. Let's say we plug in, let's say the Rams get a turnover. So this is kind of the approach that I would like to take this week. Many different ways that you can go. I hope this kind of helped you guys out, give you guys some good deep tournament takes, and good luck this weekend. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys soon.